Hey guys, real quick before we start the video, I'm working on a top 10 list of the best new Cars Diecast of 2024, as chosen by my viewers. So, if you're interested and would like to vote, please click the link in the description and vote for who you think the best new release of the year was. Now on to the video. In its nearly 2 decades of existing, the Cars Diecast line has given us consistently good facial expressions all around. There are so many Cars Diecasts out there with near-perfect facial expressions that beautifully capture the likeness of the characters, and expressions that they would make. And even when facial expressions aren't 100% screen accurate, they still tend to look pretty good, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. No, today I want to talk about the opposite. What are the worst facial expressions in the history of the Cars Diecast line? Well, that's what I'm counting down today. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video, and to another top 10 list here on the channel. Today, I'm going to be going over my picks for the 10 worst facial expressions in the history of the Cars Diecast line. This was genuinely one of the hardest lists I've ever had to make here on the channel. It was so hard for me to find 10 cars who I could strongly say had the worst facial expressions ever. And I think that really is a testament to just how great Mattel, Disney, and Pixar are at designing these characters with appealing and good expressions. Like I said before, even if they don't 100% match a character, they still tend to look pretty good. So yeah, filling out 10 spots was honestly quite difficult. This list is, of course, entirely my opinion, and I would love to hear yours down in the comments. And while it is mainly my opinion, I did ask my viewers over on my community page a few days ago what their thoughts regarding the worst expressions of all time were, and I kind of coalesced my viewers' answers with my own and combined them into this list. It was good to hear what other people said, and it really helped me out with the creation of this list. So, without any further ado, let's get started with the 10th worst facial expression of all time. While a lot of the items on this list genuinely bother me with how bad they look, our first car is one that I find silly and weird more than anything. At spot number 10, we have Sarge with roof lights, the holiday variant of Sarge, first released in 2017 and based on the book Mater Saves Christmas. Ever since this item was first announced back in 2017, I did not understand what they were going for with the facial expression. Sarge here looks weirdly shocked, weirdly energized in the eyes. I started calling him highly caffeinated Sarge as a joke here on the channel. I'm sure if you're a frequent viewer, you've probably heard me call him that, just because he looks like he's hyped up on caffeine, and it seems so out of character for Sarge to have this big shocked expression, especially when you compare him to the other expressions that we're used to Sarge having. These are kind of the two default Sarge expressions, and I think they both look a whole lot better and much more like the character. Pair that with the fact that they kept his usual frown, and this Sarge ends up looking like a deer in headlights. Honestly, I guess I wasn't the only one who thought he looked strange, because in 2021, when this Sarge was re-released, now made in Vietnam, they actually changed his facial expression to be a bit more in line with more typical Sarge faces, and that's the facial expression that he continues to have to this day. Honestly, because this Sarge is just kind of weird to me, and because he was fixed and given a better face, he's only at spot number 10 here. At spot number 9, we have Antonio Veloce Excelente. This was one of the most frequently commented answers I saw when I asked my viewers what they felt the worst diecast expression of all time was, and I completely get why people feel that way. Antonio, first released in 2010, though mine is the 2019 Thailand release, who has a weirdly high number of paint scuffs on him. I don't know how that happened exactly. Antonio was one of a couple Cars Diecasts out there who just barely have a facial expression. He's got this weird blank stare. He's got a bit of a smile going on down there, which looks pretty good, but in terms of the eyes, he's just staring blankly forward. The eyebrows are almost just a completely straight line up there. He's really not emoting, and in a world of characters with dynamic facial expressions, just having a dead stare really makes Antonio stand out as a really, really bad diecast in terms of facial expression. But don't worry, Antonio won't be the last time you see a character with a blank stare on this list. At spot number 8, we have the 2022 Thailand variant of Mel Dorado. While Thailand typically does a pretty good job updating cars for re-releases, every once in a while they'll make a variant so bafflingly bad, you just have to wonder what went wrong. And in 2022, Mel Dorado was a shining example of this, going from this to this. This is a diecast with a lot of problems, from really flimsy, poorly put on glasses, to a terrible downgrade in terms of color scheme, and yes, an expression that doesn't hold a candle to the original. But he's not much higher up on the list because I think, honestly, if the other issues that this diecast had were fixed, mainly the paint scheme, the expression wouldn't be nearly as bad. He's kind of a victim of circumstance. There are a lot of things wrong with this diecast, and the face is just one of many. And in case you were wondering what footage I'm showing here, I actually no longer have my Thailand Meldorado because I used it for a repaint, so this is just footage from when I reviewed him a few years back. The Cars Diecast line is no stranger to reusing facial expressions across different releases, and usually fans don't really have a problem with that. It typically works out just fine. Take the Piston Cup racers, for example. They all share molds, and they also share facial expressions, and it works, because they're all background racers, and having these faces makes sense for them. Another very common case of facial expressions being reused is when one character has several different paint jobs. A lot of the time, instead of giving them a new facial expression, they'll reuse a generic one, and it tends to work out pretty well because it is the same character. We see this all the time across variants or across different background characters, and people don't usually complain because it works. You know when this didn't work? When it happened to K. Pillar de Rev, the number 7 item here on the list. K. Pillar de Rev is a ringmaster at a circus in the Cars on the Road episode Showtime. She reuses the diecast model of Sterling, the guy that buys out Rusteze in Cars 3, and for some baffling reason, they decided to have the diecast reuse his expression as well. This is a problem on several levels. For starters, Sterling isn't just some background character like the Piston Cup racers are. Sterling is a fairly established character in Cars 3 with plot significance, and reusing his face and slapping it onto another item that reuses his mold really just doesn't work out. Before Cars on the Road came out, there was a rampant fan theory that K. Pillar de Rev was a disguised Sterling. Sterling was disgraced after Tex bought out Rusteze and decided to work at a circus instead, or could only afford to work at a circus. Yeah, there was a whole fan theory that spawned from the fact that this character reused Sterling's face. Not the strongest fan theory, but still an entire theory just because that face was reused. I think it's a really bad idea to reuse the face of an established character on a background character, even if they use the same mold. And beyond the fact that it's a reuse of Sterling's face, this face simply doesn't fit the K. Pillar de Rev character at all. She's a loud, bombastic, excited ringmaster presenting a circus. Having the face of some guy that just owns a business and is just kind of a suave businessman really didn't work for her. It gives her a facial expression that simply doesn't match the character very well. At the very least, when the other ringmaster, May Pillar de Rev, released a few months later, she had a much more in-character expression. For being such an iconic comedian with such a distinct look, Mattel really dropped the ball when they made the diecast based on Jay Leno's car counterpart, Jay Limo, from the first Cars movie. Released in 2010, Jay Limo shares a lot of similarities with the facial expression of another car we already talked about, Antonio Veloce Excelente. These are both items released in 2010, who both have really bad blank stares, and I put Jay above Antonio because, like I said, he's based on such an iconic comedian with a very distinct look, and having this cameo character have just a blank stare really just doesn't work. This diecast never really looked like the Jay Limo character to me at all, and I think that facial expression is a big part of that. And while I think the mouth and the iconic chin are okay, the eyes really bring this down a lot. I mean, he doesn't even have eyebrows. Jay also has lenticular, whose two expressions aren't much of an upgrade. But at least this one has eyebrows. We now move into the top 5. From here on out, we're getting into diecasts that genuinely just look really, really weak in terms of their faces. Starting off with number 5, Rodette Marker. This was one of the most frequently commented items I saw when I asked people for their takes on this topic, and it's another one that I completely understand the criticisms behind. Rodette Marker is a clown car from Cars on the Road, and her face just looks off. You know what it is? I think it's definitely down to the eyes. I think one of the easiest ways to mess up the expression on a Cars diecast is to mess up the eye size or spacing. And Rodette's eyes are weirdly far apart compared to a lot of other Cars characters, And her eyebrows are also very weirdly shaped, where they don't really line up with the eyes all that well, giving her a rather strange and out-of-place look compared to a lot of other Cars Diecasts, who typically do eye spacing and size a whole lot better than she does. In addition to that, I personally was pretty disappointed with Rodette's expression because in the show, we constantly see Rodette make this really creepy smile, which is pretty much a signature of the character, and she just kind of exists to have this running joke where she pops up behind McQueen and makes a creepy face. So to see them do this generic, sad clown face instead of the very distinct expression the character has, an expression that, for the record, her mini racer was given, was pretty disappointing to me, and I'm sure I'm not alone on that. Instead, having this weird frown with really poorly designed eyes lands Rodette a spot here on this list. Sorry, Rodette. Now I guess she finally has something to be sad about. This next item is one I genuinely really struggled to place. It jumped all over the list while I was making it. It was one of the most commented answers I saw when I asked people for the worst facial expressions. At spot number 4, we have Carla Veloso. Now, I know what you're thinking. Ty, what's so wrong with Carla Veloso? Why is her facial expression bad? I thought it looks fine. Well, I tricked you. As I'm sure many of you have already figured out, this isn't Carla Veloso. This is Carla Veloso with flames. Yeah, Carla Veloso with flames is number 4 here on the list. I think she has to go down in history as the single worst facial expression reuse of all time. This is based on Carla Veloso when she gets shot with the all-in-all camera and starts spinning out, her back bursting into flames. And instead of giving her some sort of panicked expression like the pretty perfect one given to her counterpart Nigel Gearsley with flames, they just settled for a face that is the exact same as the original Carla Veloso. Exact same facial expression. She's absolutely exploding here. She just got shot and is blowing up, and she's smiling. She's smiling. Exact same facial expression as the original. I have never seen a time where a diecast needed a distinct facial expression more than Carla Veloso with flames. And it's a shame that when they re-released her in 2020, which is this one, this is the 2021, in case you're wondering why the color scheme is a bit different. This is a China Carla, this is a 2020 Thailand Carla with flames. They didn't even bother to fix her facial expression then. So now we have two Carlas that honestly, on my shelf, when I look at them, look completely the same, except for, again, those country variants. Somebody who's a diehard Cars collector could walk into my room and go, oh, that's a Carla and that's a Thailand Carla, and not even realize, no, this is Carla with flames. It's just that bad in terms of facial expression. This desperately needed a different face. At spot number 3 on the list, we have an item that I'm sure many frequent viewers of the channel were expecting to see here today. It's Road Rumbler Mater. I have never seen an item be completely ruined by its facial expression like Road Rumbler Mater. This item is Mater kitted up in post-apocalyptic gear based on the Cars on the Road episode Road Rumblers. And let me just start off by saying it has an absolutely exquisite mold that was beautifully made, with all these metal studs molded into the body of the diecast, and great additions like the spiked mace ball and the weaponry on him with this flamethrower and the horn. The mold and the sculpt here look so good. And then you look at the facial expression and none of that matters anymore. Yikes! What happened here? Honestly, when I talked about Rodette Marker a few minutes ago, I mentioned how important it was to get eye sizing and spacing right. And I do not know what happened with this Mater in regards to that. This Mater's pupils are absolutely massive. Way bigger than your typical Mater diecasts are. Combine that with the strange face and the eyelids, which really aren't placed well. And not only do you have a Mater with really weird, huge eyes, but it comes together to make just the weirdest expression that I can't even begin to describe. I don't know what emotion Mater is feeling here. I can't even begin to explain it. It's just so strange. Another big problem with this item is the color scheme. For this Mater, they tried to update Mater's colors by making some of the light parts a bit lighter brown and the dark parts a bit darker brown to be a bit more screen accurate compared to the one consistent brown color that most Mater diecasts are. And while I do think that was a valiant effort to attempt, it ended up making this Mater diecast look even worse just because of how inconsistent the colors are. The light browns are too light, the dark browns are too dark, almost black in some places, and it makes Mater's Star's eyes and mouth stand out in a really weird way. Like, you wanted to make the eye area a lighter color. You couldn't even bother to do that to the area around the eyes. Now the eyes look like they don't even fit there. There's another Mater from 2023, the year this one came out, that also did that lighter color scheme, Cryptid Buster Mater, and it genuinely did it so much better, and also has an expression that looks like it actually fits Mater and isn't whatever this is. While I know that this Mater has its fans, I certainly am not one of them, so I'm sorry. This guy's getting number 3 on the list here today. So far on this list, we've seen 2 different diecasts with blank stares, Antonio Veloce Excellente and Jay Limo. Well, now it's time to meet the final boss, the mother of all blank stare diecasts. At spot number 2 here on the list, we have Minnie. Minnie, despite being a very memorable and notable character in the Cars series, doesn't have a facial expression on her diecast. Yeah, she's got a little smile, but she has literally no eyebrows. It's just a completely blank white space here. There are no eyebrows on her whatsoever, not even an attempt. At least with Antonio, they gave him a little bit of white at the top of the windshield, showing that he has eyebrows. Minnie doesn't. I struggle to say that Minnie has a facial expression, because she's not making a face of any kind. She's just completely blankly staring. This is another item that was one of the most frequently commented suggestions for this list, and another one that I completely get behind. They really dropped the ball with Minnie, honestly. She's another item that I think has other problems. Her color scheme is way off in my opinion. But that blank stare, if you fix that, then you'd already have a significantly better item. It's been a long time since we've seen Minnie and Van in the Diecast line, and I can only hope that when they bring these 2 back, made in Thailand for the first time, they give Minnie a face befitting of the character. Just a kind little smile with nice, happy eyebrows drawn on. Just do something, because literally anything is better than nothing, and what they did here was literally nothing. Before we get to spot number 1, I want to go over a couple of honorable mentions. Up first, Rusty's Racing Center Lightning McQueen. This is an item that I've never really heard people complain about, but its expression has bothered me ever since day 1. His eyes, in my opinion, are simply just too big, and they look so off to me compared to most other McQueen diecasts. This is another one that I think really fails in the eye size department. While the eyebrows on him are great, the eyes really are not. And on the subject of McQueens with pretty bad eye placement, I want to bring up Lightning McQueen Deputy Hazard, whose eyes are simply too small and too close together, and that, compared to this mouth that honestly makes him look like he lost his dentures, gives this McQueen a pretty awkward expression in my opinion. I honestly think the slime one has quite a better face, even though it did keep the smile it probably shouldn't have. I do think that has quite a better expression. On the subject of characters from the Cars on the Road episode B movie, Doug Crankle is supposed to be a zombie, and his face doesn't really demonstrate that all that well, but hey, at least it's much better than his color changer, who has a completely normal facial expression. At the very least, we could justify this by saying that Doug Crankle is, of course, an actor playing a zombie, and maybe this is him when he's, not playing the zombie, but still, this, actor or not, this is not the face a zombie should have. I'm sorry. And finally, for honorable mentions, we have Corey Turbowitz. Much like the Thailand variant of Meldorado that we discussed a bit earlier in the video, Corey is a diecast that suffers from a multitude of other issues, not just a bad facial expression. Her mold doesn't really look like the character, it's quite a bit too thin in my opinion, and most notably to me at least, she's missing her rear view mirrors. But having a bad expression that doesn't really look all that much like a face the character would make doesn't really help her case. And finally, at spot number 1, taking the crown for, in my opinion, the worst Cars Diecast facial expression of all time, we have the original 2006 Sally. I think every Cars collector knows that this Sally is really not the best interpretation of the character. She's the wrong shade of blue, her mold is quite inaccurate, and, of course, her facial expression is quite off. She has these weird beady eyes that just look so small and cold and give her this weird, creepy, dead smile that really doesn't look like the character at all, complete with her eyebrows that also really don't match the look of Sally all that well. This all comes together to make quite the bad-looking diecast that was in desperate need for an update. Luckily, we've gotten several, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, despite all of the updated Sallys we've gotten with better colors and far superior faces, they just keep releasing this same regular one. Sally is a diecast where, in my opinion, literally every variant of her we've ever gotten has had a better face than this one. Even like Snow Day Sally. This was one of the first ever Sally variants released just a few years after this one, and they already nailed how Sally's face should look instead of this strange, horrifying one. And while Sally's mold is another one of the big reasons as to why the diecast doesn't look all that good, we have had several more recent Sally variants that use this mold and simply give her a better face, making her look significantly better. If you want more proof than that, look no further than the 2022 5-pack exclusive Sally that did exactly that. Look at how much better that is. That's using this same original Sally mold, but with a new coat of paint, some new details, and of course a new face. That proves that while Sally's mold is bad, fixing the face really fixes this item. And while that Sally is returning in a few multi-packs this year, for whatever reason, we are still currently stuck with this old, beady, dead-eyed Sally. A real shame because literally every other option is much better than the one that Mattel gives us the most often. And there you have it, guys. That's just my list, and I'd love to hear yours, so let me know down in the comments what you think the worst Cars Diecast facial expressions of all time are. Let me know what you thought about mine. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'd love to hear it down below. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been my top 10 worst Cars Diecast expressions of all time. I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.